Hello ladies, so today Dr. Stone makes its return to my channel as promised, and some may be surprised to see the chapter already on a Thursday. But it seems that this is yet another week of Shonen Jump on Thursday instead of Friday anyway. So this Dr. Stone chapter was actually pretty damn good. I really like the direction that the series is going at the moment. Like, we've got a whole curing of Ruri's disease and generally protecting Ruri from magma, because we know that he intends to do something nasty to her unless she dies naturally first. And now we've got this whole tournament starting, which is to some extent rigged in order to increase the chances of actually making sure that magma doesn't get what he wants. But what my biggest hype is right now when it comes to Dr. Stone is the moment we had between Senku and Ruri, because that really created this huge mystery around Ruri. I mean, she's the current priestess of the village who holds all types of knowledge regarding all kinds of stuff, and now we have this whole thing where she actually confronted Senku and straight up asked him what his family name was, which in itself has Senku baffled. Not only because she seems to know Senku, but at the fact that she knew what a family name was. So it is becoming more evident that someone from Senku's era had a part in creating the village, I'd say. I mean, the evidence is certainly hinting at it very strongly, if you know what I mean. Kohaku is a blonde, so Ruri probably is too. Not sure if her hair color has been confirmed, but I know Kohaku has, and Senku happens to be blonde as well. Coincidence? Maybe, but there could be a meaning behind that. Not saying they're siblings. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Senku would know if that was his sister or something like that, but there could be a very significant connection between the two of them, and in that case probably even Kohaku, since she's the younger sister of Ruri. I mean, we don't know all of Senku's history. We know a lot of how he got into science and things like that, but his personal history, like his family background, that's something that we don't really know anything about, so that could tie into this as well at some point in this current arc. At least a backstory that is relevant to the link between them, if there is one from Senku's era. Now, I'm pretty sure that Senku is more likely to have a connection with someone else who have then passed on all of his or her knowledge to the priestess, and eventually that information was given to Ruri, and somehow that information has something on Senku. I mean, she wasn't certain about him since she did in fact ask what his family name was, so there is some uncertainty from Ruri's end, but she recognized either the name or his appearance, which could be important for all we know. Maybe someone had a picture of Senku from way back and it has somehow become a huge deal. Now, if that is the case, only the priestess would know, because no one else reacted like she did, meaning that it's going to be something that the priestess and the priestess only may see or know about, whatever it may be. I really want this whole thing to expand into something great, and knowing this series, it most likely will, because so far this series has been very satisfying with plot points, the comedy, the characters, everything pretty much. So yeah, that is, as I said, my biggest hype at this time. But this chapter touched on something bigger, because this whole Senku and Ruri thing was really brief, to be honest. The chapter mostly focused around this tournament that we'll be getting. You know, every shonen needs one, right? Dr. Stone may not be a combat-centered manga, but hey, defying the rules of shonen tropes would probably tear a hole in the space-time continuum or some shit like that, so the author has thought that, hell, I wanna live another day, so let's have that friggin' tournament, guys. But let's twist it a bit, because this tournament isn't quite like what you typically get in a normal shonen. You know, normally it would be more like just a straight up fighting game, but in the case of this tournament, they intend on using it as a mean of reaching Ruri, because the whole plot right now, if we don't consider the whole building the kingdom of science part, is to cure Ruri, and they need to win this tournament, because if they don't and Magma wins, they'll have a hard time succeeding in that. I mean, we know Magma, he even says stuff like he'll kill her himself if she doesn't die naturally, so he's a piece of work. Like, you typically expect a village of this size to have people who love each other and all of that, based on how today's society works, but this show really puts that caveman feel on this village in particular. You know, the whole thing where strength determines your value and shit. Anyway, so the matchups of this tournament is where things got really spicy, because their plan was to rig as many matches as they could, and whoever was fighting Magma in the early rounds would try and tire him out and things like that. But that didn't quite go as planned, as we learned. Instead of having Kinro potentially fighting Magma in the final, he gets matched up with him already from round 1, and you could just see the panel where everyone's like, well, shit. Of course, this doesn't mean that it's over for Kinro or anything. He has a chance. I mean, there's always a chance, even if he's never defeated Magma in the past, that he will now. Maybe not through brute force, but we've seen in various series where strategy mixed with some combat can become a great weapon, and I believe it to be the more likely case here because Kinro suffers from blurry disease, or as we would call it, being in need of glasses. And that of course creates yet another obstacle, so he won't exactly see perfectly well, and on top of that, Magma is a beast in terms of strength. Well, at least by comparison. I mean, I would argue that the old man who was creating those vials is the buffest guy in the series, even compared to Tsukasa, because like that guy was on some Master Roshi level shit. But yeah, I think Kinro is definitely going to be using some strategy that will throw Magma off guard, because in the past he's lost to Magma and he did say that he's no longer the same person, so there is bound to be something different this time around. Now we don't know exactly what he's got planned or how he failed to win in the past. I mean, I would assume that he was focusing a lot on power and not exactly on how to exploit Magma's weaknesses, because that is really one way that I could see things going this time, now that he knows that the others simply cannot help him win by tiring Magma out. He has to think fast and he has to think good. So finding out what Magma's weaknesses are would be a great start, and from there work it up until you know how to completely bust him up. Now, I don't necessarily believe that it's going to be easy for him, certainly not. I mean, it sounds easy in theory, but in practicality it's a whole different story, because you know, they'll be moving around and thinking that much while making sure Magma doesn't mess him up. Well, that's going to be a challenge for sure. But something that could happen would be if he actually takes an L against Magma, and it somehow ends up being Chrome versus Magma, because we know that Chrome has an interest in Ruri and that Kohaku has an interest in Chrome, so that could also play some kind of part in this tournament. It is a bit hard to tell this early, of course, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if something like that ended up being what happens, because having Magma lose in the first round just feels a bit too shit, if you know what I mean. Like, it feels like he's meant to rise higher than that so that we really get that sense of him being an actual threat. So to have someone else actually defeat him would be more fitting in that sense. And Chrome is far more of a centered character than Kinro is. I mean, even Ginro plays a bigger part than Kinro does at this point, so it may sound harsh, but Kinro could just end up getting stomped once more. Now, I mean, I'm sure he'll make some progress, but not enough to actually bring home victory against him. Lastly, Kohaku going to look for Suika. Now that was a bit of a dick move by Magma, as we more or less found out that he sent that guy to trick them into thinking Suika was in trouble. Now she could be in trouble, but as Senku stated, it is more than likely that it's just a lie to get Kohaku out of the picture long enough to disqualify her from the tournament, which is exactly what Magma wants, because he knows he will get defeated by Kohaku, since that's what happened the last time. Maybe even more than once in the past. I don't quite remember, but I know she was at the obstacle for Magma at least once, which means that he needed to erase her from the equation, and unless she makes it back, then he'll have succeeded, which means that the strongest competitor against Magma will be out of the games. Personally, I'd say that Kohaku will make it back, and looking at the matchups, she'd have to fight Magma in the finals, which of course only works if Magma defeats both Kinro and Chrome, which, as I said earlier, I have a feeling Chrome might actually conquer this tournament, and Kohaku will only fight back if it's against Magma or someone else that she doesn't trust. Kinro and Chrome are both good people in her eyes, so if one of them makes it to the top, she'll most likely just lose on purpose and move on to the next step in Senku's great plan to cure Ruri and to expand the Kingdom of Science. Anyway, I'm going to end the review here, so let me know what you think down below in the comments, and as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. This has been your favorite host, Perm, and I'll see you next time.